Chapter 13. Good morning. Bella walked into the kitchen and saw her dad sitting on a stool by the kitchen counter. Mrs. Potter was bustling about making pancakes for her father. She placed a platter of freshly baked muffins on the counter. They had returned late last night from the Founders' Day celebration. For Bella, it was a long time before she fell asleep, as anxious thoughts over Jack's safety skittered across her mind. Yawning, she walked into the kitchen. "Mrs. Potter, it smells heavenly." Bella grabbed a mug and poured herself a cup of coffee. "I'm glad. Eat up, my dear. With all those late nights you've been working this past week, you've forgotten to eat." Jack's cook seemed to notice everything. "I'm glad you're talking some sense into her, Mrs. Potter." Jack's low voice rumbled as he walked into the room. A shiver of warmth rolled in her belly at the sound of his voice. She turned to him and raised one eyebrow. Her husband put one arm around her shoulders and leaned down to kiss her cheek. "Look, I am eating, Jack." Bella pointed to her plate. "When you get really busy, sometimes you forget to eat and need reminding, sweetheart." Jack reached over and grabbed a muffin. Bella scrunched her nose at Jack. They sounded like an old married couple. She realized just how much she longed for that to happen for her and Jack. Her breath caught at the thought. She took a bite of the muffin, trying to get her mind off of stray thoughts. "Jack, sit down, and I'll dish out some pancakes." Mrs. Potter was about to reach for another plate when Jack interrupted. "I can't today, I'm afraid, Mrs. Potter." Jack looked at his watch. "I'm meeting a couple of people at the mine this morning, and I won't be back until late afternoon." He turned to look at Bella. "Come see me off?" "Sure." Bella stood to her feet and Jack took her hand to lead her out of the kitchen to the front door. "You'll be at home today?" Jack slipped on his jacket, his eyes searching hers. "I'll be gone this morning, but we'll be back by noon." At Bella's words, Jack's brows puckered together sharply. "I was going to stop by Dad's house. I need to find the rare books that a couple of customers have requested from my website and get them delivered." Bella tried to set his mind at ease. "After that, you'll come directly home?" "Yes, of course." Bella decided not to tell him that she was also stopping by the town office to talk to Mason. The night before, Jack had been overly protective about Mason dancing with her, and she didn't want to cause him unnecessary anxiety. "You seem worried, Jack. Why?" "I'm just concerned about your safety, especially since you overheard those two men talking and their plans to get back at me. If they want to get to me, they won't hesitate to threaten anyone I care about." Jack placed his hands on Bella's slender shoulders. Fear shot through Bella like stray bullets pinging in every direction. She shoved the panic back down, doing her best to ease her fears. Pushing her shoulders back, she resolved to show Jack that she was strong and unafraid. "Jack, I'll be fine. You don't need to worry about me." Her husband pulled her close enough for her to hear his rapid heartbeat. "Ah, my beauty, that's where you're wrong. I do worry about you very much. You see, I've become very attached to you, sweetheart. It would bring me too much heartache if something happened to you." Jack pulled back for a moment to look into her eyes. Bella's heart skipped a beat as she stared into hazel eyes darkened with emotion. His eyes moved down to her mouth, his lips settled on hers, and she melted. She cherished the strength of his arms around her, the feel of his rough jacket beneath her fingers. All too soon he pulled away from her, frustration unmistakable in the set of his jaw and the storm clouds in his eyes. "Just be careful, Bella." She wanted to help calm him. Without thinking, she reached up and with gentle hands cupped his face in her hands. "I will, Jack. I promise." Jack reached up, capturing her hands in each of his, turning them palm up. His warm lips touched the inside of each of her hands, and prickles of heat burst up her arms. Storm-filled eyes fastened onto hers a little longer, as if memorizing her features. He released her hands and nodded once before he quickly turned and walked out the door. Bella stood frozen, staring at the closed door. Her heart raced with elation at the passion she heard in Jack's voice. She wanted to believe he loved her. but she realized more than likely his passion stemmed from a fierce protectiveness over those things he considered his, like his wife. Heat coiled inside her belly at the memory of his passionate kisses. She wanted more of his sweet kisses. She wanted more of his strong arms encircling her. She wanted more of his heartfelt words of love. Yet, she still had dreams of her own. Bella longed to travel and have adventure. She longed to be a recognized leader in the field of design. Could she have both a husband who loved her and also keep those things she loved? For the first time she considered that it might be possible. She had fallen in love with her husband and desperately wanted both. However, before they had any hope of a future together, she first needed to discover who was threatening Jack. With a determined set to her shoulders, she hurried to get ready for her meeting with Mason. Stepping out of Jack's car, Bella looked up at the imposing 3-story structure that took up a third of Paradise Lake's main street. Meeting with Mason at the town office was the last thing she wanted to do, and yet she was desperate to learn more about why the town council was slow in approving Jack's project. Dark storm clouds above forewarned of a coming storm, an echo of the gloomy shadows inside of her. As she pulled the glass door open, she set her jaw, determined to do whatever it took to get the answers she needed. "Bella, it's a surprise to see you here." Vonda, a gray-haired woman in her 50s, peered up at her with sharp eyes. "I used to run into you like clockwork at the library, but I don't see you there anymore. I hear you're quite busy working on a design project for Jack Stevenson." Bella was fairly certain Vonda was searching for more fodder for the gossip mill. The town office secretary managed not only those who worked in the building, but had also been a source of information for many people in their small town. "Yes, I've been designing Jack's adventure park. It's almost ready to go and we're excited." "Well, you've been busy then. Molly at the town library told me you had designed their website. You did an incredible job on it." She put a hand under her chin, a bright smile on her face. "Thanks, Vonda. I love adding color and creating fun designs." "Well, that website needed it. We could use a facelift on our website too. I'll mention your work to Mayor Rainey." Bella smiled and nodded at her words of praise. "Also, a belated congratulations on your wedding to Jack." Bella was sure she would hardly get a word in edgewise if she didn't start talking. She wasn't interested in sharing more details than necessary about her life, for fear of feeding the local gossips. "Thanks, Vonda. Hey, I was wondering if Mason is in his office this morning. I have an appointment." A furrow formed between Vonda's brows and disappointment etched her features. She sighed and looked down at her computer, clicking her mouse until she got the right web page. "Yes, of course. Give me a moment and I'll check." She picked up the phone to buzz Mason. "Bella Stevenson to see you. All right, I'll send her in." Bella followed Vonda down the hallway and knocked on a large oak door. She looked around to see a large room filled with office workers, each hard at work at their cubicles. "Bella, you're here. Come on in." Mason opened his office door and with his hand on her shoulder walked inside. Bella had to stifle the urge to shake his hand off her shoulder as he led her to a soft chair in front of his desk. She forced herself to smile. "You sound surprised, Mason. Of course I'm here, and eager to hear more details about what you told me at the dance last night." Mason sat behind his desk, with his elbows planted on the wooden surface and fingers steepled. His eyes glittered like a proud peacock with its feathers on display for people to walk by and admire. "Of course, Bella. I'm happy you're finally willing to see things my way." Mason's cocky attitude made her want to run out of the room, but she forced herself to stay put. He opened a desk drawer and pulled out some documents, placing them in front of her. "I promised to show you how I will soon be a rich man, Bella. There it is." Mason pointed to a document that displayed a graph showing a future forecast of increasing profit. "This looks like a map of Paradise Lake with large condos along the lakefront." "It is. That's where the next big wave of profit is. Get ready for the new future of Paradise Lake. A future I'm proud to be part of along with a few other investors." Mason's eyes glittered until Bella was sure she could see dollar signs in his pupils. "I thought condos being built along the lakefront were only rumors." "No, this is very real." Mason pointed to the map. Bella moved to get a closer look. "This spot along the beach looks like it's really close to Jack's land where he wants to build the adventure park." "Yes, sadly, that row of condominiums will really decrease Jack's view of the lake and surrounding mountains. It will also negatively affect his property value." Mason spoke the words carelessly, as if none of it mattered. "Jack will be out of luck and likely won't get the approval he needs from the town to build his adventure park." Bella stiffened as anger turned her blood to hot molten lava. Mason and those other investors were doing this deliberately to try to ruin Jack. She was just about to give him a piece of her mind when there was a loud knock on his office door. Mason walked over to open the door. A tall, slender blonde stood there in a short sweater dress that emphasized every curve in her body. Bella recognized her as the same woman who had stopped by their product table and insulted Jack at the Founders' Day celebration. Suddenly, Bella's thoughts went in a different direction. Mason and the Wolf brothers weren't above using their office assistant to try to derail Jack's project. It was obvious by building their condos that they were hindering Jack's goals for the adventure park. Were there more secrets Mason was hiding? "Tiffany, can't you see I'm busy? What is it?" Mason's tone was filled with irritation. "You need to come with me, Mason, and talk to this man. He's quite upset." Tiffany's high-pitched voice sounded more like a whine. "All right, I'll go talk to him." Mason turned, and looking at Bella, he spoke quickly. "I'll be back in just a moment." "Of course." Bella gave him a small smile, and he left the office. As soon as Mason was gone, Bella took out her smartphone and walked around his desk. Aware that Mason could return at any moment, she needed to work fast. Opening drawers, she pulled out a few files and quickly scanned through them, not finding anything important. She went through the next drawer, and still there was nothing. The last drawer, she didn't think there was anything of consequence, but when she skimmed her fingers along the bottom of the drawer, they caught a small ribbon. Tugging on the ribbon, she pulled until a wooden board pulled up. Bella expelled a breath when she saw the secret compartment. There were a bunch of documents there. For once, Bella was glad for Mason's aversion to using digital methods to store important documents. Ever since high school, he kept a paper trail, and it looked like today was her lucky day. With hurried movements, Bella turned the pages, scanning to see if there was anything important. The first file showed information on Senator Ivan Wolf. Scanning through the documents, she read descriptions of the new condominiums that were to be built. Further notes on the documents stated that funding for the project would be provided by SOS Group, with a handwritten note that someone tried to cross out. She looked closer and saw the words, seeing where the senator was receiving funding for this project. Bella took out her smartphone and began taking pictures of all the documents so she could show Jack. As she continued through the files, she found pictures of Senator Wolf and his brothers Bert and Bart taken with some men and women she didn't recognize. Next, there was a map of the United States, and some cities in different states were circled in red. There were addresses written in red ink beside each location. Another document had pictures and names of two different men, with notes beside each of them of their expertise. The words written beside the first name were chemicals, and beside the other man's name was written homemade bombs. Swallowing back fear, Bella grabbed her smartphone and started snapping pictures of the documents. She hurried to put all the documents back and slid the wooden board into place and placed the rest of the files on top of it before closing the drawer. She had just slipped her smartphone into her pocket when Mason opened the door. One eyebrow raised in question before he asked, "Have you seen anything interesting, Bella?" Bella's face flushed, and she squirmed a little at being caught standing so near his desk. She was thankful he hadn't opened the door a minute sooner. Her heart was still racing with fear from all that she'd just discovered. Spotting a picture on his desk, she picked it up. "I was just admiring your photo with your little sister." Bella remembered Mason's little sister from when she would hang around with them in high school. "That was taken a few summers ago, but yes, I like to keep that on my desk to remind myself to call her once in a while. Mason walked over to Bella, taking the picture out of her hands, placing it back on his desk. But back to our previous conversation. What do you think of the condos? They look like they are well designed, but I don't believe these large condos should be built so near Jack's land. Bella walked to the other side of his desk, her brows furrowed together in frustration at the thought. That's a laugh. If it ruins Jack's view and property value, then I say good riddance. There's only one of us that needs to be taken down a peg or two, and it ain't me. Bella suddenly remembered the two men talking in the hallway during the Founders' Day celebration. One man had spoken those same words about Jack. It was Mason. She recognized his voice. Mason was one of the men who had threatened Jack. Swaying a little, she leaned against Mason's desk, feeling the blood drain away from her face. Are you okay, Bella? You don't look well. Mason stepped away from her. Bella looked up at him, suddenly seeing her ex-boyfriend for the first time as a horrible person who would harm others to reach his own goals. She couldn't believe he was part of this terrible plot. Just the sight of him made her sick. You're right, Mason. I'm suddenly not feeling well. I'm going to head home. Bella walked to the office door, her hand on the doorknob before she turned around. I need to say this. It's not okay to ruin someone else's life just to make your own better, no matter how much money you stand to gain from it. Well, that's where we disagree, Bella. Mason laughed, crossing his arms over his chest. She closed the door and hurried out of the town office, not even pausing to say goodbye to Vonda. It was only as Bella got into her car that she let out the breath she'd been holding. Her heart raced as she leaned her head against the steering wheel. She needed to get home to Jack. She needed to tell him what she'd learned. All of a sudden, her phone rang. Bella, there's been a change of plans. Meet me at the hospital as soon as you can, all right? Jack's voice sounded harried. Why? Did something happen to my dad? Bella sat up straighter and gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles turning white. No, your dad's fine. At Jack's words, Bella sank back against the car seat in relief. She really wouldn't have been able to handle her dad going back into the hospital again. It's Al. She's had her baby. She heard Jack's chuckle at the other end of the phone line. Al and Adam had their baby. Excited at the prospect of seeing the new little one, she started the car. I'll be there as soon as I can. Bella hung up the phone and started driving toward the hospital. As she parked the car in the hospital parking lot, she realized that her talk with Jack about what she'd discovered today would need to be put on hold until later. Bella hurried into the hospital. Seeing Al's name on one of the doors in the maternity wing, she pushed it open only to see the Stevenson family laughing and carrying on. Eliza Stevenson held the swaddled baby close to her heart, her eyes bright and smile beaming. Granddad and Grandmom sat on the other side, their smiles radiant at the sight of their first great-grandchild. Gabe, Luke, and Zach were all standing on the opposite side of the room next to Adam, smiling like the proud uncles they were. Congratulations, Al and Adam. This is so exciting. Bella gave Al and Adam each a little hug before she went to stand beside Jack. Her husband pulled her close to his side. Thanks, Bella. We couldn't be more excited that our son is finally here. Al looked up at Adam, who leaned down and kissed her forehead. He's perfect, Al. Bella looked at the beautiful sleeping baby, then back at Al, whose face lit up with pride. Here, Bella, it's your turn to hold him. Eliza stood to her feet and walked over to Bella, gently transferring the baby into her arms. Tears formed in Bella's eyes and one slid down her cheek as she stared at the tiny baby boy. A tuft of dark blonde hair curled at the top of his head. His small nose and perfect little mouth gave him the look of a little angel. Bella slipped one finger under clenched fingers, which the tiny boy grabbed onto with a tight grip. I'm in love already with this little one. She looked at Al and turned to look at Jack. His eyes were shuttered over, but she could see a softening in his eyes. Al sat up further on the bed and whispered something to Adam, who nodded. Looking back towards Bella and Jack, Al asked, Adam and I have something to ask you two. Bella could feel Jack's hand tense on her shoulder. Would the two of you be willing to be little Daniel Adams' godparents? Elle and Adam looked at them, a hopeful smile on their faces. Bella looked up at Jack, a silent question in his hooded gaze. She nodded at him, her smile wide and welcoming. We'd be honored. Jack swallowed convulsively as he studied his brother and sister-in-law. Bella turned to give the baby to Jack. Hesitantly, Jack took the little bundle into his arms. A pained expression crossed her husband's face that lasted only a moment as he looked down at the baby boy in his arms. He held the infant only for a moment, before passing the baby back to his mama. We're real happy for you both. We'll come and visit again, but Bella and I need to leave as we have other commitments today. Jack kissed Al on the cheek and gave Adam a hug, leaving Bella to do the same before she followed him out of the hospital room. Bella had to hurry to keep up with her husband. It was pouring rain as they made their way to the hospital entrance. Jack, why did we need to leave so suddenly? Is something troubling you? Talk to me, Jack. Help me understand. Bella stood by the door, out of the rain. Her husband turned to look over at her, a haunted look reflected in his eyes. We'll talk when we get home, Bella. Bella nodded and followed after him out into the rain. She couldn't help but wonder what was going on with Jack. Driving home, all she could think about was how she wished Jack would trust her enough to tell her what troubled him. He said they would talk at home. Bella really hoped, at last, Jack would open up and let her into his world.